Welcome back. This is episode 3 of the Campus House podcast. That Jamie on the other end, and
Hello.
myself, Chris Rowe. Since we're into titles today, executive director of campus no of Encounter Ministries. Jamie is the
Mhm.
director of campus missions. But we're just glad to see y'all. Glad to or for y'all to see us. I guess we won't be seeing anybody else. So we wanted to share this week's schedule at the campus house and a little bit about what we'll be talking about. So we'll get right to it. Jamie, what
Mhm.
does this week look like? Starting with this evening.
Yeah. So tonight we got our Tuesday night deal. Tuesday night campus house worship. So we'll get together. We'll have a meal. We will play some trivia. We'll have trivia and or other games. Most of the time it's trivia. Sometimes it's Pictionary. But we'll have worship. And then we'll just have a conversation. So regular Tuesday night. As usual, Wednesday, I'll be in the Hill Center. So once again, we'll just be having lunch. Bring your friends. Bring your friends if you want to.
So what time will you be in the Hill Center, and what time are we doing Tuesday night?
Yeah. So Tuesday night is at 7:30 p.m. So
Until everybody leaves.
until that's what I always tell people. But probably like 9:30 is probably the latest. Sometimes it goes to 10:30. But
I don't
uh,
think I've ever left before 9:30. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. But Wednesday, our lunch starts at 12, and I'll usually be sitting there until probably about 2 o'clock or so. If someone shows up, I at like 1:50, I probably don't leave until like 2:30 to 3. But it's pretty flexible. And then Thursday we're gonna do a little bit different. I mentioned it last week. I was wrong. Okay. The basketball game is this Thursday. This one, not last Thursday. It's the last home game of the year. It starts at 8 o'clock. But our normal Thursday night hangout start at like 7:30 or so. So beforehand we're gonna try and get like some Chick-fil-A or something. And we'll head back down to Bartow Arena, hang out and watch the Blazers play their last home game. It's a fun team this year.
so
So we'll
so
see.
maybe we'll try to have some food there around 7 or 7:15, so y'all can actually eat before you head down.
Yep.
Great. And tonight, 7:30, we'll be discussing Proverbs 4:23.
Hmm.
But before we get there, Jamie, we mentioned last night, and maybe do you have your comprehensive Birmingham coffee?
I
What do
do.
we call it? Coffee house critique here? Is this
Yeah.
what we're calling it?
So is the comprehensive list of coffee shops in Birmingham.
Okay, I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure you had it, and we'll
Yeah.
catch that. You got to stay till the end. We'll get
Yeah.
Jamie to review. Let's do two coffee houses um, tonight. Maybe one of the higher ones, not the
Yeah.
highest. Let's save that, but
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
higher ones and one of the lower ones.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
quickly, this week, what will be? We're still taking with us our discussion from last week. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else," or as we talked about on the podcast, with all diligence. I like above all else. I like that translation, but both I like taking them together. Guard your heart, for from it flow the issues of life, or it's the wellspring of life. So we want to take this little and not just make cookie cutter fortune cookie Christianity out of it, or you just have a nice little, mantra, but really take that as a lens and look at some of the more um, well-known stories and scriptures in our faith. Like tonight, my intention, and we kind of follow the conversation depending on what people share, but my intention is for us to begin to look at what's titled the Lord's Prayer um, through the lens of Proverbs 4:23. Um, there are other verses like and other stories, even when Jesus was pressed by the disciples or by his followers to do certain things, and yet he ends up taking a nap or spending the afternoon walking around the lake or on the lake and ends up meeting them, or he just gets away to pray and they're looking for him. So obviously Jesus is is taking this idea of guarding his heart, nourishing his heart seriously. And this is not a, hey man, you should every morning you should do a 30-minute quiet time. If you do that, that's awesome. This is something much deeper than that. Do you, with all diligence, above all else, guard your heart? We want to look at the stories of Jesus and the words of our faith, and really look through that lens. So as we shared that and talked about that, Jamie, what stands out or what strikes you, briefly, about any of that?
Yeah. I think we've talked about this a lot. So like we do talk about this a lot. But I think that probably one of the most striking things to me about this topic is that it is so countercultural, right? Like it is so like against the mindset, yeah, of like the US, but like even as we're talking right now on UAB's campus, right? Like this idea of like I got to get things done. I got to get going. Like I've got, 50, and I'm not saying don't write your papers. Please do. Like you need to do your business. That's good. But like oftentimes our heart becomes not even second priority, like probably fourth or fifth or sixth, um, maybe somewhere down in the teens. But like it's so against the grain of college. It's so against the grain of the country that we live in. It's so against the grain of the world that we live in. And so I think the most striking thing to me is that it's so simple, but it's so like complex. Um, it's complex in that like we've got to actually try to guard our hearts. But it's so simple in that it's so easy to guard your heart with a God who wants that for you. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on the topic.
No, that's good. It is, I think, pretty much everything we deal with, every system we deal with, from work to school to even church, they're set up to be productive, and that more often than not is not guarding our hearts. That's part of why I want to look at the Lord's Prayer today, and even the idea of how it begins with the very first word being our, and the collective, the group itself. And if Jesus grew up with that, then what are we looking at when he begins to teach, quote unquote, when the disciples ask him to teach them to pray? I think he did a lot more than just this one instance. This simply is a highlighted moment, a highlighted story in the midst of that. So tonight we'll be talking through some more of that. Not sure how long how many weeks this conversation is going to go on, and hopefully we can find some clips, maybe even from some other movies other than Les Mis. Uh, which is funny that I use that. Like it's a great movie, but I have at least 50 top 10 movies. So we'll find something with another movie to share here relatively soon.
Mhm.
So now to get to the most or least, depending on how you measure it, important part of the hopefully brief podcast, Jamie's going to share with us. I'd like you to pick out maybe. Yeah, I don't want you to look. We're not saying any of the coffee houses here in Birmingham are terrible, and if you wanted to sponsor or give to your local community, yeah, we'll write you a receipt, and you can donate some coffee because Jamie drinks a lot of it and occasionally shares it with some of our students. So we're
Sometimes.
not putting everybody down. Jamie's working on this
Mm. Yeah, this is the most
system.
math. Yeah, this is the most math I've done in a really long time.
Yeah. Well,
So
it's a little social science as well.
a little bit. Yeah. So our first. I'll start with our lowest. Because I feel like everyone's dying to know that, right? So our lowest coffee shop in Birmingham, is one that's not central to Birmingham, but is central to the United States, and that is Starbucks Coffee. All right. As I explained last week, our highest rating can be a 35, right? 35 is the perfect score. No coffee shop on this list has gotten to a 35. So like let's just go ahead and clear that. But Starbucks scored an overall 8.5 out of 35. Their coffee received a 3.1 out of 10 because it has coffee. Sometimes like a lot of the things on the menu aren't coffee, but there are drinks. So the atmosphere is a 3.9 because of that screeching steam wand that's going probably 95% of the time that you're in there. Um, yeah, the wand isn't supposed to make that noise. So like, it does at first for about 2 seconds, but it's not supposed to make it the entirety of the time that you're steaming milk. The customer service received a 1.5. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It did not receive a negative X factor, right? So like it's either -5 or +5. The reason for this was because it wasn't good and there wasn't anything great enough to add positive, but there isn't like the fact that they are everywhere and that the cup of coffee that you get in Birmingham is the exact same cup of coffee that you can get in Seattle. That is kind of a plus. So they receive a 0 out of -5 or +5. And I'll pick one of our higher ones here. Baba Java and Pelham. Baba Java in total received a 24.8, which is pretty high.
That's
Uh,
nice. I will say I've had the Colombian, I think, pour over from
yeah,
theirs,
yeah.
and I will say, and had the chance through some people that we know to meet the owners and operators, and I'm glad you chose that one. That's one
Yeah,
that I mean it is in a strip center, but it's
yeah.
yeah I'm glad that's one of the higher ones. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So Baba Java received an 8.8 for their coffee. It's very good coffee,
Very good.
out of 10. So they've got an Ethiopian pour over. It's really good. It's like $11, but it's delicious, and I am uh, both proud and annoyed that I spent that much. So atmosphere is a 5.8. They're good. They could use a little bit more seating, a little bit more comfortable seating. Because I'm not a big fan of fluorescent lights. Like I like the energy that they save, but my office in here is a lot of ambient, like yellow light. And they have a lot of fluorescent lights. But it is productive. I've gotten a lot of work done in Baba Java. So like, so it does help. Their customer service is a 7.7. Really great. They've got really good employees and they serve coffee well. They received an X factor of 2.5 positive. And this is kind of twofold. So they serve Turkish coffee, which is a really cool kind of form of coffee. You like grind it up so fine that it like mixes with the water and it just basically becomes coffee. Um, and another plus is that they do classes. So you can go in and learn how to make like some cool latte art, and some cool like ways to make coffee. So they received a positive 2.5 and received an overall 24.8 for their coffee prowess.
Well, and I think they should get maybe an extra half point or so. Maybe we should have a meeting there
Mm,
because it's halfway, approximately halfway between the campus house and my house.
yeah.
So that's about as perfect. And do they have outdoor seating? It's starting. I think it's going to be in the 80s this week.
They have like three or four little wire tables, that you
Okay,
can sit at.
so a little bit. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so that's our first test. If you want to argue with Jamie, please, leave some
Please.
comments or send him a nasty message in the group
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
And for those of y'all that are watching that aren't Campus House students, you can find us online at encounterministriesonline.org, encounterministriesonline.org. And if you ever had the wild idea that maybe you wanted to help feed some students, we are sharing meals on Tuesday nights again. We need somebody to sponsor a few chicken sandwiches on Thursday night.
Mhm.
And we are supported by donations from churches and friends, mostly individuals. We won't name, but anyway, this has been our. Hopefully, we haven't timed it, but hopefully, we'll be around the same time as last week. We'll
Hmm.
see most of y'all tonight. And Jamie, you got any parting words?
Have a great week.
Have a great week.